Happening now, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and Fed Reserve Chair Jerome Powell testifying this time before the House Financial Services Committee. First came the Senate, then came the House. We will bring you any news that comes from that. Let's bring in Congressman Andy Barr, Republican from Kentucky. So Congressman Powell finally admitting that inflation is not transitory. So when do we hear a mea culpa from Yellen?
Well, David, unfortunately, in her prepared remarks today, Secretary Yellen didn't mention inflation once. I just came from the hearing.
Wow.
And, you know, on the heels of the most expensive Thanksgiving in decades, Americans are heading into the holiday shopping season that's going to be the most expensive in history. And this administration is not only failing to address the inflation tax and the inflation crisis that they're creating through their overspending and their spending binge, they're doubling down on this strategy, this failed strategy that the American people simply cannot afford.
Well, and even though Powell did admit that it's not transitory inflation, he still didn't talk much about the cause of it. The fact that it's all of the deficit spending and then the Fed buying up the debt that is issued by Treasury. Over 60% of all of the bonds issued by Treasury are being bought up by the Fed, and they create money in order to buy up that debt, and that's what causes inflation. He's not talking a lot about that.
Absolutely, and the consumer price index is now over 6%, and core inflation, when you remove high energy and food costs, which is of course where most Americans really feel the hit, it's at 4.6%. That's way off of the Fed's 2% price stability target. And so what I'm going to be asking Chair Powell, and we challenged Chairman Powell the last time he was in front of our committee, when they were calling it transitory, saying this is not just about pandemic-related supply chain bottlenecks. This is about overspending, where there's more money in the economy chasing fewer goods and services and constraining supply of energy, constraining supply of labor. All of this is forcing prices up. And we're going to challenge the Fed in this hearing to more appropriately respond to the fiscal policy realities. The Fed doesn't like to talk about fiscal policy. They say their role is only monetary policy. But if they don't anticipate higher prices in the context of bad fiscal policy, then the Fed is really behind the curve.
And then you have the regulatory policies of the Biden administration that are propping up inflation and causing it to spike, specifically in the field of energy, where you have the closing of the pipelines, you have new regulations on oil drilling, you have new taxes, by the way, on oil drilling. So these regulatory issues are a part of inflation as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So the overregulation and the proposed increase in taxes are the other part of the story, because it's not just about overspending, juicing the demand. It's also the fact that this administration's bad policies are constraining the capability of the American people to provide the supply. And the shortages that you're seeing, it's not related to the pandemic. It's related to bad policies coming from Democrats out of Washington. We've got to go back to a policy of energy dominance. Think about this. The American people are paying 61% more at the pump right now at the holiday season. And that is a big deal. That's a big hit. That's an inflation tax on the American people. And it's because in 1 year's time, we've gone from a position of energy dominance to total overdependence on foreign sources of energy. It is a bad policy, and it's costing the American people. They cannot afford this.
It costs our pride as well to go hat in hand to OPEC and Russia when we had energy independence before. Congressman, great to see you. Thank you very much for being here. Have a great holiday.
Still ahead.